Greetings, YouTube. I think this is recording. We'll find out the hard way after it's over and everything processes. But I am so honored to be joined by KT1. We have taken more than a year break from the interview series on this channel. I hit him up and knew with my semester starting on Monday that this was going to be like the last chance I had to interview somebody, and he was the top of the list and the top of the requested list after last year's awesome interview. So KT, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to be here today.
My pleasure.
And I just want to start off by saying thank you to everybody who submitted questions for this interview, because some of you submitted multiple questions. We had basically between 40 and 50 questions submitted. I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them in this time, but we'll try to get through most. So the first thing I wanted to say is just to check in with you. How are you feeling right now about the state of the game as we enter a new week of content?
I feel somewhat better than I did before that Twitch stream. I must admit, a lot of the things that they did announce there do look quite exciting. And also, if you put it all together in a timeline, and obviously it's not set in stone because we all know how, like, Masteries 2.0 and Wish Crystals and Bases uh, have been coming soon for a very long time. But just looking at the things that they promised and told us about on that Twitch stream, it does sound like we're in for very, very busy, like at the very least August, September, October, and possibly even December as well. So I do like that. However, it is impossible to deny that I think at large the community at the moment is facing quite a big turmoil. I think you made a video about it recently as well, about the impact on July 4th offers. And the way I have started viewing these big sales days is that effectively at every big sales day, Kabam slashes a massive gap in the face of community, and it really separates haves and have-nots, and there's this like big ravine, like big bridge, big scar, if you will. And then it's Kabam's job in the upcoming months to patch it up, to try and unite these different sides of community. And that always has been, like, in a sense, where we have gifting event, and then we have somebody with rank 4 champions and other people with 0 or 1, and then it's kind of up to Kabam to release those rank 4 champions in the game economy. So the disparity isn't 1 to 4, like, as in it's a major difference when somebody has, let's say, 10 rank 5 champions and you have 1. That means they have 10 times the amount of those rank 5 champions, and there's much more top end power. Versus if somebody has 80 rank 5 champions and you have 40, the actual difference to that is significantly smaller, because you're not using 80 champions at a time in any game mode. As long as you're more wise or more conservative with your rank up choices, you can kind of do similar things. You can't rank up champions as lavishly on a whim and stuff like that, but you can be in a similar ballpark, for instance. And I'm just not quite happy with the speed Kabam's patching things up. I know we just got the Glory Store update and stuff like that, but aside, like, Glory Store update feels fine for now, but I could predict it being outdated in like 2 months. And aside from Battleground Store, every other aspect of the game feels outdated completely, to a point where, yeah, when July offers more than doubled my top end account power, and made you question, this one day of sales gave you more top end rank ups than anything and everything I have done in this game put together combined. And with that, I thought it would be no brainer that, immediately after July, August, we're going to get virtually all the stores updated, incursions, glory, loyalty store, game mode, solo events, stuff like that. And Kabam's doing this massive revamp because they did the biggest sales ever, but they haven't done that. And the fact that they're going slow with it, and even with the things that they promised in October, September, November, stuff like that, it's just not fast enough. Because by that time, those people who continuously keep buying offers and get all the stuff on top, are going to be again that much further. The one needs to be much more rapid at updating game economy. It's just completely outdated, starting from solo events to Paragon login calendars to daily crystals to, again, AQ rewards to loyalty store, stuff like that.
Do you think that it's especially a huge gap right now because not only was it the most we've ever seen for July 4th week offers, but it's also the first time that we've had battlegrounds so into the economy. So when you have a difference between one rank 5 and 10, you see that and how you feel like you can compete in the most important game mode in the game.
I don't think it's especially because of that. Because if it wasn't battlegrounds, it was prestige for AQ, and AQ mattered more, or it was all the best defenders and attacker for Alliance Tournament mattered. There's always something that matters the most. The fact that it shifts from one to another to a third thing, I don't think makes that big of an impact. It's much more the fact that not only the sales themselves were much more expensive, where initially, like, on these sales we had like purchase limit of 1 with these extra rewards. That was like 5 years ago. Then they updated purchase limit to 3. Then they updated to purchase limit 4. Now it was 4 plus 1 in the web store plus additional Odin, that's reliquary stuff, and now 2 sets of the unit offers. And I think and the end result of it worked out as, again, as I said, is like, I'm not the biggest whale in the game by any means. I actually spent a lot less money than people think I do in the game, but I also diligently always play at the top end of AQ, AW, battleground, stuff like that, and I do buy the bigger offers. And so I would say that overall, I have a relatively high-end account, for sure, because for how long I have played and I have maintained it, and all that other stuff. And the fact that even account of my size was, again, top end power, like rank 5s and rank 2s were more than doubled instantly in a day. It just felt completely filthy. I think that the sheer volume of it is what caused it.
So what would your message be to the players who couldn't afford the July 4th week sales and feel like they're too far behind now?
Well, there are positive examples, that are exception to the rule, that I will definitely say that it's not impossible. I know of at least like 5 to 6 players who basically spend $0 on those July sales and are running with like 5 rank 5 6 stars or 4 rank 5 6 stars and still made it to Celestial 5 or Mysterium, stuff like that. Because your, champion being beefier obviously does help you, but if you draft better, if you outsmart your opponent, if you sometimes are just luckier, you can make it up there. It obviously has become a lot harder. And the other aspect to it is that everything in this game depreciates, and the longer the time goes, again, the current difference will be less meaningful in the grand scheme of things, because there's massive difference when somebody has 5 rank 5s and another person has 25. But when you get to the point where you have 20 rank 5s and your opponent has 50, you're not going to notice the difference being that big, because, majority of your deck or your champions that you use will still be at similar compared to rank up level. The key factor is what Kabam does with the next progression level, with 7-star rank 3s and 7-star acquisition. I think, if Kabam butchers that as badly as they drop the ball with these July offers, then, there's no point beating around the bushes. This game is either pay or play casual. But as long as they, are relatively mindful with how they release 7-star rank 3s and do open the rank up resources for the rank 2s and 6-star rank 5s, then, eventually the current difference is going to be less meaningful.
Speaking of rank 3 7 stars, that was Kabam's pitch to if you ascend a 6-star. Were you happy with the early details of Ascension?
Ascension actually Ascension's details kind of impressed me more than I thought they would, because I was a lot more skeptical before I found out the details, because there were so many things hanging up in there. Exactly how big of a benefit it's going to give to your 6 stars. Because, if it wasn't enough, then it just wasn't enough, because 6-star ranks from rank 4 to rank 5 only was like 15% increase, and then 7-star rank 2s would still be more powerful. But them equaling 7-star rank 2 champions, I think, is perfect place for Ascension in terms of power increase. The second thing that really worried me were the pure economics of it, at the point where if it was going to cost catalysts, then no way how you were looking at it, it just wouldn't be worth doing, because if you use 3 tier 6 CCs to take a 6-star to rank 5, and if you would need, let's say, another 3 tier 6 CCs to ascend the champion, opposed to the 4 catalysts that's needed to take 7-star to rank 2, that would be equally or even more powerful than ascended 6-star, then just, pure math would tell you that Ascension is stupid. Like, if you would have to use the catalyst. So the fact that they made it that primordial dust, I think, was about as good of a solution to that as we could find. And lastly, the fact that primordial dust is a generic item and it's not tied to class. It's something that I like as well, because it gives you, completely and absolutely free choice. Because there could have been a lot of shenanigans, for instance, where it could have been tied to specific champions or specific types, just so Kabam dictates, so we can't ascend the Hercules, for instance. It would have been super easy for them to have class dusts or dusts based on specific tags or something like that, and just avoid letting us ascend some specific champions. So I like that they gave us full freedom of like any champion that you want. And the last thing that I do quite like about Ascension is the fact that it doesn't impact prestige. So nobody will feel forced to ascend any champion ever based on prestige. So the details came out more positive than I thought it would be. In addition to the fact that Ascension's coming sooner than I thought it would be. Because Ascension realistically will only matter for as long as 7-star rank 3s are not the dominant power level in the game. Because if we're all running around with 7-star rank 3 champions, then ascended 6-stars will still not keep up. They're still going to be outdated. But as long as majority of our top end firepower is that 6-star rank 5, 7-star rank 2 level, then Ascension matters. And if they were to delay it, then it would just be kind of meaningless to a lot of people. So I do think that, yeah, overall they did about as good of a job as they could have with Ascension.
Do you think Ascension is Kabam's answer to keeping many of the best champions of 6-stars, including Hercules, not in the 7-star pool?
No. They were either going to release them or not, regardless. I don't think Ascension as mechanic itself is going to affect that too much. I do, however, think that it is going to be something that helps players overcome Kabam's decisions of whether they release or do not release 7-stars.
So do you expect a 7-star Hercules at some point, or do you think he's one of the many champions that'll be cut off like Quake?
Yeah, no.
Okay, yeah.
No, we have had quite a few answers in that department of similar to Quake from other Kabam employee streams or comments, where basically, if you want that, like the popular line about Quake is, if you want a 6-star Quake, let us nerf her. And that's kind of a similar situation with Hercules. Like, we know for a fact that Kabam desperately would want to nerf Hercules. And if balancing program existed when Hercules was released, he would immediately get, chock-a-blocked. So yeah, unless we get to a point where community is okay with them gutting Hercules, there will be no 7-star Hercules. Which, again, to be honest, like, might sound kind of drastic, but I'm okay with. Like, on a personal level, I want a 7-star Hercules, just like I would, sell my left kidney potentially for a 6-star Quake at the time. But from a game balance perspective, I'm happy that they didn't release it, because over relying on Quake made me worse as a player, because that was like an easy way out. And it's similar with Hercules. I don't want a game where all of the content is grab a Hercules, a whole bunch of 20% revives, some boosts, and go pew pew. When Kabam releases content or any game modes, I want to use different champions. I want to kind of like plan and strategize. Only kind of aspect of this entire game where I fully openly abuse Hercules publicly, and I admit to it, is AQ, because I hate AQ. Yeah, because it's not the new content. It's kind of like taking the same test every single day. So naturally, you just want to grab something that requires you to pay the least amount of attention, where you do not care if you get hit or don't, and if you mess up, just one revive is fine, stuff like that. But as for the rest of the game, I like make a conscious effort not to use Hercules on my streams when 8.2 comes out, stuff like that, because I don't want to play that game.
So this is a great moment for our first question from Angel or Eyes 8087. So You talked about what you don't want to play. This question is specifically, what type of difficult content would you like to see in the future? And I think to that too, content that makes you pull in different champions or challenge different nodes versus just using the same champion over and over.
Like honestly, like looking back at it, this might be controversial. I want 6.2, a lot of them.
Mhm.
Like, because 6.2 was content with teeth. I remember, like, because every fight was different on the lane. It wasn't like all the fights with the same nodes and stuff like that. The champions with different nodes. There were these gates. There were all of these problems to solve. It was frustrating, but I never felt more kind of like accomplished or overcome something than I did after 6.2. I think the big problem there was, and this is kind of like the bit that I probably should have led with. I don't agree with content like 6.2 being a mandatory story content. As in, like, I don't think everybody is, as masochistic as I am in the sense that, you'd willingly want to jump through that and stuff like that. I don't think that was the right call. Forcing, some newer or mediocre or casual players get through that just so they can progress in the story. No, I don't think that's right. I, however, would absolutely kill for an updated version of 6.2 as a challenge, Grandmaster Gauntlet type of thing. And yeah, speaking of that, from all of the content released in recent years, I think Grandmaster Gauntlet was the only thing that I actually properly enjoyed. So yeah, that's the type of content that I'd absolutely love to see more of, like 6.2 Grandmaster Gauntlet, but not as a mandatory type of thing, as a challenge mode or side stuff.
Does the next version of the Abyss get you excited?
Uh, it really depends on Kabam because again, with Abyss, I do have a lot of conceptual problems with how they're putting on the damage caps, with how they're inventing these die now buttons for the case of revenue. As in, like, I'd be much more excited if I had more of a faith in Kabam to allow it to be more skill based. Because like in Abyss, like even right now, pretty much, maybe unless you enter with a full team of Svenster rank 2s, you're still going to use a ton of revives. And not because you mess up, just because you're going to run out of some skirmish charges or some other crap like that. I'm even perfectly fine dealing with that random 1% evade and stuff like that. But the fact that we have like the biggest health pools in game, but we can't unleash proper damage, with a 50k cap or 85k cap in Abyss, it's just stupid. It just shows that I think Kabam has lack of imaginations how to counter or rein in some champions, or those champions should never have been released in their forms. Like, Proxima, Proxima, when it released, everybody was so hyped for her until it turns out that there is not a single piece of content where you can actually benefit from the damage output properly. And similar to those skirmish charges and stuff like that. I don't want Kabam to tell me that I'm dead now because I played too well. I want to, play for as long as I can, until I lose focus or make a mistake. And if I did, then that's my fault. And like these timers and skirmish charges, I don't like. Overall, yeah, of course, I like Everest content and stuff like that. But but it's more from desire to beat it rather than enjoy it. If you're talking about enjoying it, again, stuff like 6.2, where you have to problem solve constantly, adjust your team for virtually every path and scout and pay attention, or like Grandmaster Gauntlet, where we still have quite big health pools and your team building is super important and you need to take in consideration all these things. I like that stuff more than Abyss, but in new version of Abyss, I'd still absolutely jump in it head first and try and blitz through it.
Absolutely. There's a question from a longtime supporter of the community, Good Guy Kai, that says, with the direction of the game is going, what are a couple of changes that you would add to the game to bring back the love and the excitement so many summoners have lost throughout the years?
Honestly, hard content. I think hard content is one of those things where everybody complained about it for so much that Kabam took away all difficult solo content pretty much. And that's why it feels so less joyous or impactful when you beat that content. I think all of these boss rushes initially that significant portions of community didn't beat gave other part something to strive and try and achieve, and all of these hard story content chapters let you, at least to me, feel accomplished once you beat it. And fact of the matter is, solo content at the moment in game is quite dead. Like, you know, Battlegrounds is cool, don't get me wrong, by far my favorite game mode, and I love the fact that they added it. But when it comes to, yeah, challenges and solo content stuff, like it's pretty, it kind of seems like Kabam themselves even giving up on story content, like reducing it down to like 3 parts per quest instead of 6, which, you know, 6 parts was already a reduction from potentially 10 or 11 parts in 6.2 at some chapters. And another thing is, I think we just need more to play for and less to buy. I think this game's currently functions almost more of as digital marketplace than as a game where you actually earn that stuff. If it wouldn't be for Battlegrounds, there would be, you know, virtually no place where to actually even enjoy your ranked up champions properly.
One of the biggest complaints, even with spring cleaning, was that you could play nothing, and the rewards from spring cleaning, especially at the top, were still way better than Act 8. And so I think that's
Yeah.
the problem too.
Yeah, I think Kabam has absolutely overshot the proportion of rewards earned versus rewards purchased. And like, look, I have absolutely nothing against, you know, Kabam monetizing the game. I get it. You know, we don't live in ideal world. In ideal world, it would be quite literally, you know, you have whatever rewards you beat your content for. But okay, Kabam monetizes it. It's fine. I get it. Let them make their money. Only thing I think player base is asking is, let us earn something comparable to what people can buy.
Yeah. No,
Again, not to like, because at the moment it's like quite literally, you know, 1 to 5, 1 to 10 proportion. Like, you can grind arenas, you can do all the content, and you're gonna get like 1, 2 rank ups versus somebody who doesn't do any of it and buys the offers and it's gonna get like 8, 9, 10.
yeah, it's not proportional at all. User ill9mo1fm41 says, what do you think the next progression title will be based on? And do you think they'll make it possible for free to play to get it fast at all?
7-star rank 3s. 7-star rank 3s. Initially, the conversation was either maxed out 6 stars or 7-star rank 2s. But taking a look at all the timelines, how 7-star rank 3s are coming out already in October, and they're probably going to be available to some people in like November, December, most likely, either Cyber Weekend sales or gifting or something like that. And then combine that with the fact that we typically gain new progression level at end of the story content now, at the end of the chapter now. Like, Thronebreaker is after 6.4, I believe. Paragon is after 7.4. So I think whatever title is going to be next is going to be after you beat 8.4 and have either 1, 2, or 3 7-star rank 3s available for free-to-play players soon. I think it's going to be pretty much the same situation as it was with Paragon. Yes, technically, as in, like, if you have, you know, purchased all of the Cyber Weekend unit offers, if you have saved up units for the additional deals for Act 8 chapters and stuff like that, and if you have done like all of the new challenge content, then probably. If you're playing, you know, relatively seriously but haven't done almost everything that's out there, then you'd probably have to wait a couple of months. I also think that quite possibly your ability to be whatever the next progression title is going to come out immediately upon launch could be tied to whether you explore that new abyss, which should be coming at the end of the year.
Yeah, free to play. Only the free to play players that can hoard tens of thousands of units, right? For the special offers like the 10,000
basically, and are also, you know, pushing out all of these hard modes content.
Because to me, that means it's got to be the people who grind the arena every week or some other way to get the units, because if that's the only way that they can get them to that level. I was wondering, William Miller 5530 said, what are your thoughts on future champion designs, i.e. Gladiator, and how the meta will change around them? Meanwhile, older champs may depreciate more than before. He said he misses when Kabam reworked a few champs every few months.
Yeah, well, first of all, Kabam did with the buff program, I think is quite disgusting in the way they tried to sell it gradually as if it's, some sort of benefit. When to me, it seems that, especially after Kabam Mike posted that relic time investment that basically is similar to the champion process, I was like, that's where buff program went. I am about 90% sure in my mind that the resources that used to buff champions effectively went to designing relics, which is something that nobody asked or wanted for. I could be wrong. Again, it's just speculation. Obviously, I don't work for Kabam, but based on the way Kabam Mike worded the answer of why they're taking pause with the relics, made me realize that, takes this design space and design hours away from obviously somewhere, and they had to come from someplace. And if you logically take a look at what thing went away at around the time when relics kind of like appeared or started coming out, then it's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense, So I do think that buff program effectively in Kabam got exchanged by relic program, which from a business standpoint makes sense because buffs didn't really generate that much money aside from community excitement, but relics is something that they can monetize. At the same time, I think it's wrong mindset. I think it's the similar situation how IKEA sells super underpriced meatballs in their store just to get more people in there and more excited and able to shop for longer and not having them leave the store to go eat and never come back. I think pretty much every business that I have worked for always accepted the fact that some areas of the business don't generate money, but increase the amount of clients you have or satisfaction of your clients. So they spend in areas that do generate money. But that put aside, buff program is something that I think pretty much everybody misses dearly. As far as champions outdated go, I actually have completely opposite opinion. I think the new champion power level due to balancing is never going to accidentally reach the imbecile levels that some errors in past allowed Hercules to exist or Kitty Pryde to exist and stuff like that. And like if you take a look at 2023 champions, none of the champions is like an absolutely busted, broken. And, I would say none of the champions are at the moment, for instance, at the top of their class with, possible exception of maybe Absorbing Man or something similar to that. But even then, I don't think Absorbing Man is like the best Mystic champion. And I think Kabam is at a fairly good place design-wise where champions are different, are interesting, but aren't like OP. And we still have Archangel, that's one of the most banned champions anywhere, everywhere, which is like from 2016 or 17, and Hercules. And I think if anything, the strongest champions came out from like 2018 to 2021, and then Kabam kind of like capped the max power level that they allow these champions. And with the balancing updates, basically they're making sure that they do not accidentally ever release another Hercules. So I don't think the new champions kind of like threaten older champions in the sense whether they're going to get outdated. Besides, Kabam can do that manually by affecting what nodes they release and so on and so forth. Because if Kabam wants to make any champion relevant, they can do it very easily with selecting what Alliance War and Battlegrounds metas are, for instance. It's kind of like when for a couple of seasons Spider-Man 2099 seemed like the bee's knees and everybody was super hyped about him because he was doing all these bosses, primarily just because True Strike node exists in Alliance War boss. As soon as that node went away, Spider-Man 2099 pretty much also went away. And Kabam can do that with any set of champions that they do like or don't like, just by picking and choosing what metas they release in the most impactful game modes.
Well, first off,
kind of like, yeah, sorry.
You've made me hungry for meatballs with your. So I'm trying to get my mind off of the meatballs. Are you ready for a little bit of like a fast?
Yeah, sure. We can get on. Sorry, I have been probably.
No, you're good. I love it. I always tell my students I'd rather have long, thoughtful sound bites than things that have no meat in them. So never apologize for that. But I say that because memes in basketball put so much time into this. They actually type 12 questions, and I want to get to most of them. And some of them are like,
okay, we can do a quick fire round.
Really interesting, and some are just random. But how do you not get bored, and why do you still play?
People, largely. people, and the final kind of like bit is Battleground specifically, because I by nature am relatively competitive, and I love the fact that in Battlegrounds there is no. First of all, Battlegrounds is a type of game mode that makes you back up your words or not, like, because I think at the moment that's the best measure of your overall MCOC ability. And we see a lot of players that were, quote unquote, said the best of the best ever, and they don't do well in Battlegrounds. And some people just kind of like rise out of nowhere to do well in Battlegrounds. So yeah, it's basically people and Battlegrounds at the moment.
And how important is the game to your life currently?
Uh, well, how important? Unfortunately, I am currently weighing out some other options and considering some other things to do with. It's not necessarily as much as Kabam did it. It's more of a mixture of Kabam not being quite up to scruff, in addition to YouTube doing YouTube things.
Oh, we could talk forever about YouTube doing YouTube things. What are your tips on gaining top tier skill?
That's actually very simple. Every time you get your ass whooped, figure out why and do something about it.
That's great life advice, by the way. That's not just even in this.
It's like every time something happens and you randomly die, figure out why. Every time you get caught by a special attack, figure out why it happens. Every time you miss something, figure out why. And other than that, just follow and general top tier players, if they stream stuff like that. People should consider it pretty much a privilege, for instance, to watch FinTech fight in Value and stuff like that, because that is a top tier gameplay that you have access to for free. That is about as good as you can see in this game. Watch it and learn from it. Like I myself watch, a lot of other people and learn a lot of things, even after this many years.
Shout out to FinTech, absolutely. Right now, who's your personal favorite champ?
Juggernaut.
Oh, why?
I just love him so much. He's so good in Battlegrounds. And it just feels so good to use him because of the unstoppable and the easy intercepts and the high amount of damage. I have like so many video memes about Juggernaut and the emojis about Juggernaut. I absolutely love the guy.
What do you want added to the game most?
Mm. Mastery loadouts. Can't stand the mastery system. Yeah, mastery loadouts and also alliance war mastery placement setups, because all of this change to alliance war is set and forget is completely meaningless if we need to keep changing our masteries. And mastery loadouts in general are just so overdue in this game.
So you've answered some of the other questions, so we're going to skip to something very depressing for me to ask you personally. What are your thoughts on the fact that I am just about 12 crystals away from going 0 for 300 for 7 stars in Paragon crystals?
I think such is life. I'm not with as bad of a luck, but I'm how always and forever being at the bottom end spectrum overall. Like I'm consistently underperforming the crystal odds. Let's call it like that. And as an end result, I actually kind of like that because of that, I have pretty much stopped opening any RNG crystals and stuff like that. Like I never open more than a couple Paragon crystals now for new champions, or maybe just buy like an early access bundle just to have like the 5-star or something. That has completely stopped me from spending money on cabs and Paragons and stuff like that, which I'm kind of all right with.
And I bet Kabam would hear that and think, "Oh no, we don't want to disincentivize people to spend money." But it's true if you give it, because I know other games have like a guarantee after opening a certain amount of crystals that you'll get a champion, and I don't think MCLC will ever do that.
Yeah, I think last champion that I hunted for with like cow crystals or something like that. I think it was Quicksilver, Scorpion, something like that. But sometimes when you go hard for these champions, it wasn't uncommon to drop 5 Odins, 6 Odins, stuff like that. That was like years back when I spent more on the game. And then I think in 2021 or 2022, I hunted 1 or 2 champions. And I think it was I think it's been like year plus since I have ever tried pulling something from one of the, just because it pretty much never works out. And eventually you get that champion anyways, either from basic arena or some featured crystal or something. So yeah, you know,
What are your thoughts on
that's
meme and basketball's 8.4 boss being the Beyonder?
cool. As in like that's kind of like the thing. I am I'm not a complete noob in regards of Marvel and Marvel comics and stuff like that. I'm like super into it as well. And I think in this game, one of the most important things is to differentiate in between the character from the comics to whether they are good in the game. Like there are a ton of characters that I absolutely do not care for or actively dislike that are good in the game, and I have no problems using them. And obviously, as we know, there are a ton of champions that should be absolutely OP, but are kind of crap in the game, you know? So I'm not that focused on it. Like I'm ripping it in Overseer 24/7 about him being like a hipster sitting at Starbucks smelling of weed, trying to write a screenplay and being unemployed waiter or whatever else. But in reality, I use him and I like him as a champion, you know?
Absolutely. So Gold Taker 23 wants to know, how do you see the game improving over the years with the input issues and bugs? Or do you think people will keep leaving if nothing is done?
Obviously people keep leaving because nothing's done. I think these questions are a bit more complex than a lot of people ever give them thought to, because it's more equivalent to cash flow. Your cash flow is either positive or negative based on the amount of income that you gain and your expenditure. The same thing is with the active user base of this game. People will always be leaving, whether that's inputs, whether it's game economy, whether that's another reason or something that ticks them off. And then there are people who pick this game up or restart this game after a break and stuff like that. So this game is big enough not to necessarily always talk about, games dead in a month. No, that type of situation pretty much never is going to happen. The question is whether the game is losing or gaining active player base at any given time. I do, however, think the game should have been about 10 times the size and popularity if Kabam was half decent company and fix the bugs, fix the input issues, and run the game economy properly.
There you go. I think a lot of people feel that way. Zigo666 basically asked, do you think progression rewards have hurt the game? And do you think they should do more content that's not progression based for the rewards overall?
As long as the progression requirements are attainable and reasonable, I am for progression-based rewards, because it is in fact true that people who have played this game for like half a year play completely different version of the game that I play, for instance, and they care about different resources and stuff like that, and most of them are at different, levels. And if anything, I wish there were more progression titles, because every single time there seems to be that Kabam is moving just too slow. Like even right now, highest title is Paragon, and the requirement for that is 3 rank 4s. Do you reasonably think that a person who has 3 rank 4s has the same interests or same ability to clear content than somebody with 8 rank 2 7 stars and 15 rank 5 5 stars or something like that? No, they play completely different worlds and universes basically. And I also like the idea that it's something that incentivizes you to push forward. You want to get the better stuff. That's what you achieve on.
So in the spirit of that, Lightburn 2296 wants to know, do you think 7-star progression is moving too fast?
Yes.
Okay.
7 star rank 3s dropping within half a year or basically, or 7 star release is not something I saw coming. I do, however, think that I think as big of a problem as that is the fact that 7 stars are completely overpowered compared to 6 stars, or more specifically, how 6 stars related to 5 stars. Like there's significantly bigger gap. I do, however, think that Kabam is doing so far somewhat of a better job introducing them to the game that they did with 6 stars.
White Bear's question was already asked. So we're going to move to Birdjoy 5974's question. With the current state of the game, would you ever call for a boycott, and how effective do you think it would be?
It's impossible now. The whole boycott thing is just not happening, and that is not happening because Kabam has been very, very smart. because vast majority of the biggest voices in community are in CCP or affiliated with CCP. And strictly speaking, the apt comparison there would be North Korean news media or Chinese news media. If the biggest voices are controlled by the government, you will never see, or it will be incredibly hard to see some sort of organized mass unrest or resistance or opposition. So Kabam has been very, very clever to incentivize people in joining CCP. And I think the biggest voices, especially who do stand, monetary gains from being in CCP by access to all this new information that they do monetize with videos and clicks, are basically actively incentivized not to jeopardize the relationship, not to mention that Kabam seems to have started hiring from the pool of CCP content creators. So there's, a bunch that either already work for Kabam or are very willing to go along with virtually everything just in order not to jeopardize their opportunity to work for them in the future. And in situation like that, with the way kind of like communities people at the moment are situated, I just don't think it's feasible for an actual proper boycott to happen.
I think those are all excellent points. I also think the Black ISO store gives them a kind of cash flow with the monthly subscription service that they didn't have for the first several years that the game was involved. But several people have asked about why you think that hasn't been updated more, and how you would improve the Black ISO store for the money that you put into it.
I think this hasn't been updated because I don't have to. That's the ultimate, because plenty of people still have it. Because aside from the Black ISO store, that sigil does give additional benefits like faster energy recharge, increased inventory caps, namely. And realistically speaking, regardless of how outdated the Black ISO store is, the offer is still worth it if you ever spend money on the game, because it gives you like your units, your like shards from the solo events and stuff like that. And as long as enough people buy the Black ISO store, there is no real need to rush updating it.
That's a good point. Supply and demand, right? It just
Yeah.
Ryan Lovelady's got a really good question. He says, do you think Kabam rolled out relics prematurely without considering they already have complex game features that the average player deals with?
Well, the relic situation is much more complex again than most people know. Kabam tried adding relics or gear system about 4 or 5 separate times, and pretty much every single time there was big enough community backlash that they just basically had to forcefully take it out. There have been people invited to Kabam HQ to test out these features, like on the down low from the OG whales. There was this obviously Chinese game where stuff like that was also tested, as far as I know, and then they tried bringing them in several other times because they always saw relics as this great opportunity to have like another whole layer of monetization, because effectively it's kind of like, imagine doubling your champion income, because you can, sell the 6 stones, sell awakening gems for relics, you have relic catalyst, relic ISO, relic everything, right? And every single time community was independent enough to push back to them, until the last time when it wasn't. And again, large part of it was, in my opinion, the fact that the biggest voice in community are in CCP, and they even quite literally basically made videos saying like, listen up guys, it's either 7 stars or relics, which one do you want more? At least relics is going to be something new that we haven't had before, because I don't want to completely redo all my roster or something like that. And lo and behold, for with one lie or another, with one pacification tactic or another, they got away with it, and now we have both 7 stars and relics, and they finally got them in.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was funny that it was presented as an either or for so long, but then it was almost like they came together almost at the same time anyway. So
yeah,
there you go. Fun question from Evan the Encyclopedia. If you were in charge of Kabam, I know that's probably a scary thought, but you had the power to buff any champion, who would you choose and how would you buff them?
Iron Man. It's a disgrace that Kabam is allowing OGs, and the reason why many of us have downloaded this game, to be so goddamn worthless.
So
if I need to select specifically one, that would be Iron Man, just because of Tony Stark is MCU for as long as MCU was actually fun and good. And if it is like a smaller group of champions, then it's definitely, the OGs, the completely outdated OGs, Captain America, Superior Iron Man, them lot. I
Yeah,
think it is shameful that they are so bad in this game. We don't need 15 versions of, Iron Man with new and stuff. Like, make the original, the one that made people download this game, make them actually good.
I remember the first time I landed on an Iron Man and my family was around me and they all started clapping, right? They're like, "Oh, that's got to be
Yeah.
great, right?" And it's just depressing to be like, "No, it sucks actually."
I remember grinding for a 4-star or 3-star Hulkbuster and missing and being devastated.
Man, I can see that though at the time. I remember grinding and missing 4-star
And
games.
then realizing Hulkbuster absolutely sucked until he got buffed.
Yeah. Speaking of disappointing and potentially controversial, Harry Toeface says, "Is there anything additional you think Kabam should do dealing with modders?"
Additional?
Yeah, or just ways to maybe disincentivize further people from modding the game.
Uh, I mean, it's kind of difficult to sell. I think the most important thing is uh, they just need to be better at it, whatever it is that they're doing, so it actually happens real time, not 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, half a year later, and some of these, because people were like arena botting for such a long time and getting away with it, and people are modding for such a long time getting away with it. They just need to be much more efficient. For instance, because like when somebody mods in battlegrounds, and let's say they're in Gladiator Circuit and C5, and I match them there. Okay, they're gonna screw over my match, but just think about how many people they had to screw over to even get to the Gladiator Circuit in the first place. So
That is,
every time you spot a modder, it's not that they just, ruin your gaming experience. It's the fact that they have ruined so many other people, and a single one of them like does a lot of damage. So that kind of stuff like needs to happen pretty much real time, and they just need so much more resources in it. Aside from additional things, I think what is happening, I believe, in some other games. I'm not entirely sure how uh it's probably never going to happen because of Kabam's policies, so, because you can't even like name a bot on forums or something like that. But they do display basically tokens of shame next to people's profiles for a set period of time. Or something like that. But I think the most important thing is just do whatever you do more efficiently.
in that spirit, Biker Boys Russ One has a question for you specifically. Do you have a make or break point that will make you stay or quit the game? And if so, what for each?
Make or break point.
So in other words, whether you would definitely leave the game or if something's just so good you think I could never leave it.
Yeah, my break point will probably be Cyber Weekend and gifting offers.
Mm.
Because if Kabam does the same thing again that they did with July 4th to the same effect, or goes an inch further, that's enough. That's it. Then I just know for a fact that this game is too pricey for me. I can't sustain it. And I also know myself that I wouldn't be satisfied playing this game without giving myself the best opportunity to compete at the best level because of Battlegrounds. And that would be the point where I would just look at it and say that Kabam has gone too far. Because I do think that what they did with these sales is just too much.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really is. It has caused such a massive damage to so many players, not only morale, but also like position in the game. As I said, like it really makes you think of what are you even doing here when a single day of offers more than double your top end account power is just far too much.
Well, I've got
And
friends.
if they do that thing again or increase the bundles again, so because again, one thing was making kind of like, especially because I'm like content creator, but even if I wouldn't be content creator, it'd be one thing to, let's say, set aside X amount of money for these special offers. But it's another thing to set aside more and more and more. And when you basically are in a situation where you need to set aside like $1,000 like 3 or 4 times a year, it's just no, no.
Yeah, the financial point is the breaking point. I've got friends too that have played casually, but they've got kids and spouses, and they had friends that started and bought all the offers, and even at the lowest progression level, still had an account that looked similar or better than theirs, and they've been playing the game for like 5 years. And so that was also part of the frustration, even though we can talk a lot about the Paragon offers or the Thronebreaker offers. It was even the people who could start at level 5 and then just buy up everything that suddenly like erased 5 years of progression in one day.
I believe there is this was it Kurt? I think he got banned recently, and he started like a new free-to-play account. And just to kind of like prove a point, I think his account's like 3 weeks old now, the new one that he started, and I think he has already better account than Brian Grant. He has
Oh,
spent like a few $1,000s on, like, I think $3,000 or $4,000, like as in like buying some Paragon crystals and any and all offers that have arrived. So in 3 weeks, I think primarily to make a point, he basically spent, I think, $3,000 or $4,000, and in about 3 weeks, he has same or higher prestige than Brian Grant has now, and also already very serviceable account. And that was without one of these big sales,
that is so
because
wild.
that happened after July 4th.
Wow, that is
And that was like without Cyber Weekend or spring cleaning or July 4th.
yeah, so you factor that in, and then what does that do to that kind of count?
Yeah, one of those sales, and you're immediately line years ahead.
Wow.
But even in an off-peak period, 1 month, sufficient amount of money, and you have overtaken other people's work for 6 years, 7 years. It's just too imbalanced.
Rob,
And the big problem comes from the game not letting you play to earn your rewards enough. Again, I'm not saying that nobody should be able to do that. I'm saying the problem is that whatever you play for, be that side event, be that incursions, be that some other quest or monthly event, is just not enough compared to what they are selling.
absolutely. Rob has a specific question about Alliance War. Do you have the feeling that it's necessary for an overhaul for Alliance War, or just changing the map and updating the rewards like they announced?
Yeah. I think with Alliance War, there is that upside because I do think they need to do that more with AQ than with AW. Overall, yeah, I do think they have been too slow up changing them up for Alliance War. But to be honest, they have been like changing nodes and changing lanes, stuff like that. And I think Alliance War, compared to Alliance Quest and many other things in the game, Alliance War has been relatively healthy. And it comes down to the fact that you don't attack every day. Like you attack 3 times a week, which is less than 5 on doing exactly the same thing with exactly the same nodes. Also, the fact that the defensive and offensive placements are a bit different. So you end up using different champions and attack, and there are these defensive offensive tactic changes. You could make it, slightly more dynamic. There's always room for improvement. But I think overall Alliance War doesn't suffer from the tediousness of Alliance Quest, quite often because there's also more at stake. Because messing up and dying means more. So, from Masters level 1 experience, whenever you do tier 1 Alliance War fights, you kind of pump yourself up. You make sure that you're awake in quiet place. You kind of get ready for it. Put my, boost up, check everything, ask your teammates if there's anything else that you should know, anything and stuff like that, and then kind of like go and do it. Another great thing that makes Alliance War less tedious is the fact that we have those small energy refills now, and that we can pretty much always do our entire run in a single go if we want. So it isn't something that we need to get stressed about, worked up, do a bit, come back, do a bit, come back type of thing. So pretty much always works out. It's like you kind of mentally prep yourself, 3 times a week and do it and get it done. And it's almost always different because, again, different defensive placements, different offensive teams. So I don't think it's like as bad as other places in the game. But again, there always could be more improvements.
Speaking of improvements, Drowse 9825 wants to know what 3 champions, if you can't think of 3, just remember you want to see added to the game still.
Think Typhoon is one.
Oh.
I think that would be very, very cool.
Okay.
And I always kind of like prep one answer from the top of my head because this is something that gets asked quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Spot was my previous one for like a couple of years. I said Spot, and I'm quite happy with the way he turned out. And before that was Jubilee, and I'm absolutely not happy with how she turned out. Other than those, I don't know. Think My Home is definitely one that I have like been giving it a thought.
I still want to see like a 97 X-Men version of Professor X. I still think that'd be cool.
That would be cool. I think what was the dog's name from Guardians of the Galaxy? I really liked good dog or bad dog.
Yeah,
the telepathic dog. I think that'd be something very cool.
People are yelling it right now.
I mean, yeah, from Guardians of the Galaxy. I just want a good dog in the game. Good doggy.
By the way, Halder 1983. I have no idea what this means, but I was supposed to welcome you saying DZIEN.
Dzień dobry.
Yeah.
Hello.
There you go. See,
there you go.
I still got it in, buddy, even though I'm sure everything I'm saying, and I have no idea why I said that. Midwest Whale, who's been a long time sub both of ours, says, what do you believe is holding MCSU back from reaching its highest potential?
Kabam.
Kabam.
Boom. Bugs, and again, too predatory monetization practices with not enough earnable things in the game. Basically, too aggressive monetization and stale game economy and all the bugs. Other than that, like if Kabam could have gotten the input issues in order and actually had some sort of QA process and actually run the game economy better, this game could have been 10 times as big as it is, which is a shame.
No joke. And I'm sure Kabam agrees for their bottom line. We've talked a lot about make or break points in this interview today, and Brian Lovelady had a specific ones. Do you think there does become a certain point where there are too many champions or characters in the game?
Not really, no.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all about how you manage it.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be a set of champions that are more relevant and a set of champions that are less relevant. And it could be quite daunting if you pick up the game right now. But as long as you're willing to like learn on the go, I'm sure you can do just fine. Especially because you don't need to know everything. Even if I have been here as pretty much all of the champions have been released, because I have been playing this since the very, very beginning, there's tons of things that I have forgotten about a lot of champion abilities. But the reality is you don't need to know, exact abilities of like Black Panther Civil War. Until you find the nasty Black Panther Civil War boss, you will be satisfied with the knowledge that you probably don't want to parry stun him if he has armor ups, for instance. And that is such a short amount of text, tiny bit of information that effectively gives you all that you need to know fighting the champion instead of all the abilities. And the same goes for many of the newer champions. Is there anything special that you need? 2023 champions, for instance, is there anything mega special that you need to know fighting, for instance, Baron Zemo? Because ability is like a wall of text. Only thing that you really need to know is don't debuff him aside from stun. Other than that, you're gonna be fine.
So in the spirit of 2023 champions, Mama Bear wants to know, shout out Mama Bear, do you have a favorite new champ of this year that has the most utility?
Favorite? I don't think I have a single favorite. A Kate, I like Kate a lot. Silk is very, very new, but I'm messing around with Silk a ton.
Okay, so you can be silky smooth. Is that the goal?
Yeah, I think it's in between Kate and Silk. Sandban is exactly the type of champion that I typically like. I just hope he gets a bit of a tune-up.
Yes, and I think that probably will happen. I know you know this. This is the question. I'm like, I think I'm gonna go ahead and ask it just to see. You and I are criticized because we both get feedback that we're too critical of Kabam, and we just need to be thankful the game exists and stop complaining, stop being negative, blah blah blah. What do you think the importance of being critical of Kabam is if we were just to stop and never be critical?
I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, what do you think the importance is of any news media to hold politicians accountable? Or obviously, I'm not trying to compare it, but the principles are the same. Like there is, unfortunately, again, and this is without any malice towards anyone. Unfortunately, I do feel like a significant portion of content creators effectively had a choice to make, whether it be truthful and honest or effectively stand with Kabam and keep that relationship as positive and open as possible. And unfortunately, in this game, it turns out that a significant portion chose that, and there aren't too many people who will, openly say things that they are unhappy with that have a big platform. And that's kind of like the problem here as well, because just because we don't like everything Kabam does, it automatically means that anything you say is going to be negative or taken with a grain of salt. Because if you look at my videos, I do, give Kabam plenty of props. I do make positive videos when I can. I'm still obviously very enthusiastic about champion releases and the game modes and things like that. And at the same time, when there are bad things happening, I do think that somebody needs to talk about them because not many people do.
Well, and I also think that some people only watch the videos of yours that are the most critical because they're the ones that get shared the most. And so it's also why, unfortunately, in the news media, they save the good news for last because they know the ratings, unfortunately, the way human beings work will sometimes be better. They used to say if it bleeds, it leads on cable TV. And so I have people who tell me, Prof, you're too critical. You hate kebab. And then I'll send them like 6 links of positive videos I've done. And they're like, I didn't even know these existed. I'm like, I know, because you actually don't watch the channel. You only watch what's recommended or shared. And so I feel that. With that being said, Tim Gonzalez says he's heard for years that the game is dying, the community is dying. He's never been that guy. He's always rolled his eyes, but now he doesn't know. What would you say to somebody who asks you, is the game dying? Is the community in danger of really dying?
Well, again, that entirely depends on Obama. And here is exactly the same point that I mentioned before. The game is big enough not to talk in terms of dying or about to die, but talk in more terms of like whether you are as a positive or negative cash flow or player flow and stuff like that. And the game is big enough to sustain, let's say, losing 10,000 players a month for X amount of months. And we have been at similar positions like this several times. Unfortunately, we don't really have much data to say whether this is more severe than before or not. There definitely is plenty of dissatisfaction and turmoil with Kabam. But at the same time, for instance, after the Twitch stream, it does appear that there are going to be a lot of very fun, cool, interesting things happening, keeping us busy. And that is how Kabam pulls players back who have retired or been taking it easy or gains new players and stuff like that. And it always depends on Kabam. Like if Kabam, we never expect Kabam to get all of their shit together. But if Kabam gets critical mass of it back in one pile, then then the game carries on.
Yeah, the word I always hear thrown out more than ever in the 8 years I've been playing is stale. They're just ready for something fresh, and I do think Kabam recognizes that. One of the reasons they recognize that is with this new Battlegrounds Brawl season. Let's say, hypothetically, because I'm going to be rooting for you, completely honest, I'm biased, I'm going to be rooting for you in this. If you were to win Battlegrounds Brawl, what champion would you rank 3?
From existing 7-stars.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we need to figure out what are the existing 7-stars. uh, uh, it probably would be one of the new features, and depends whether I can get them awakened or not. If it's unawakened champions, then I think a rank 3 Shuri or Bishop would be quite cool. Oh, no, wait, never mind. No, rank 3 Hulk, probably. Yeah.
OG.
Hulk so far is my favorite 7-star. I have a 7-star rank 2 Hulk. So there's a very solid chance that it would be a 7-star rank 3 Hulk.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got a rank 2 unawakened 7-star, and he's also fun to use with Hercules for sure. By the way, Steve Wester views himself as the GOAT donor of your channel, aka Comic Penny Parker Craven Scorpion Rider. His question was, do you have another GOAT donor of your channel? You don't have to answer, but I figured I'd ask it.
I mean, there are always, some people that are more active. What I do find quite interesting is that it's more or less always kind of like periodical. There always seems to be someone that's quite generous that appears and stays with the channel for like a year or two. And then, eventually either gets out of the game or gets out of the channel and then moves on, and then somebody else kind of comes. I must say, though, that overall, again, this is kind of like the double trouble problem, which is what I kind of like hinted at, that I probably am looking at a few other things to do as well, and take the whole YouTube thing less seriously going forward, which is not only YouTube is absolutely screwing content creators over right now, and unless they, revert the ad revenue rates for what they used to be, then it's just not feasible to go on for much longer unless there's like massive influx
Yeah,
of
I
the
saw
popularity of the channel.
I saw news that YouTube is experiencing 90% less audience than they were 2 years ago. And part
Well,
of
that's
that,
because they censor everybody.
exactly. So part of that is the algorithm change, and then people don't realize how much YouTube Shorts changed the algorithm too, with where they thought they'd prioritize. I think that's had a massive.
And it's also the fact that there's so many people desperately running away from YouTube because you can't say perfectly reasonable, valid things on YouTube just because somebody in high position that has decided that it shouldn't be allowed. And that's the most frustrating thing. Whenever you do stream and people ask you questions, you need to kind of dance around edges, never to use a word that's too harsh and stuff like that. And it just feels so wrong. On YouTube specifically, you do feel like I grew up in post-Soviet Union, like 90s Eastern Europe. And I can tell you that the world in the last 5 or so years feels significantly less free than my parents described at the point of collapse of Soviet Union.
Wow. So you think
Where
censorship?
a lot of where there was like an actual lots of censorship regulation, but the point Soviet Union was collapsing, it wasn't enforced as rigorously. Whereas right now, we don't have these rules written in stone, but it is enforced much more rigorously, and that's why it's much more dangerous, because you don't know exactly what you can and cannot say. At end of Soviet Union, everybody knew the things you cannot say. It's just that a lot of people didn't really care and they never enforced it. Versus, let's say 50, 60 years ago, there were these rules, everything was censored, and people actually followed it up. And over time, it kind of became more lax and lax and lax and lax. Well, you're not supposed to say that, but nobody really went after you if you did. And now on all of these online spaces, and not all, especially in UK, not only in online spaces, we have had people arrested for memes on Facebook, and we have had lady arrested for literally praying in her head, not even out loud, in not a loud place, and that's why people are running away from YouTube, because YouTube is one of the leaders in it's our way or highway. But what I wanted to say in terms of donations as well, you can see a drastic decrease in the overall donation amount by, like, I'd say as much as 80% compared year to year. And that's mainly just because the world is not doing too well. Like, the economy in States or UK and pretty much everywhere else. And that's an understandable thing. And I have absolutely no resentment towards people that, oh, like you used to donate to me and you don't anymore. Completely get it, because all of this YouTube, especially for a subject like mobile gaming, is your disposable income on entertainment. And when you need to tighten your belt, that is the first thing that is going to go.
Yeah, no question about it. Speaking of tightening belts, Gravo says his number one complaint, which I'm sure you have heard and I've heard like for years, is when you get a champion, you fall in love with the champion, and then they say later that champion's not working as intended. Isn't there a bunch of testing they should do more to improve that, to where we're not told a year plus later that this champion actually that you fell in love
There
with?
is.
Yeah.
That is absolutely disgusting, the lack of QA process. And what's more, okay, maybe disgusting isn't the right word. It's definitely feels, what's the best way to kind of describe it? It feels disrespectful
Hmm.
that Kabam is continuously releasing all of these things without proper testing. And we're all human. We get it. We make mistakes, but we're talking about the amount of mistakes. And the worst part of it is the way Kabam handles it, and especially certain community managers, the way they engage with community. Because it's one thing to have a bug that they need to address it, and a lot of players are pissed off. But it's completely another thing for a community manager to be passive aggressive towards the community. It's completely like, check the Trello board. It was listed on Trello. Like, especially like, and how they handle it, like it's always random. You never know whether Kabam is going to do the right thing. Half the times they don't. And even if they do, you still have, like, even with, let's say, they gave round down tickets for Mole Man after the change. Nobody was happy getting that round down ticket. What people wanted is for them to leave Mole Man alone. And that is when Kabam does the right thing and does give that round down ticket or something, right? And then on top of it, half the times they don't. So I don't think it's not as much, or at least part of it, it's not just the bugs and problems. Very big part of it is the way they manage community, the way they reply to people, and the way they action these things. The same thing with yeah, Zemo now, route mechanic, everything else. So for whatever reason, Craven gets ranked on tickets, Baron Zemo doesn't, for instance. When in reality, there are 90 times more people who have ranked up Baron Zemo than Craven. There's like maybe 50 people on this entire planet that has highly ranked up Craven.
Mm-hmm.
And there were thousands upon thousands of people with ranked up Baron Zemo. And they give this impression that the rank down ticket is like a tangible resource that they need to grow in the hills of Colombia and farm and, fly across the ocean with the jet where it gets polished from raw materials and turned into this impeccable piece work of art that costs hundreds of dollars a piece, and then they would take this huge sacrifice and out of their generous nature to distribute it to the peasant community for free, when in reality it's just a digital token and it doesn't really require many work hours at all to execute. And it's not like we get free resource, we just get back what we already used. So I
Not even
don't understand at all why they're so stingy.
and not even 6 stones or awakening gems now. I mean, we get the basic
Yeah.
version. So I'm glad you brought up rank down tickets, because I don't know if you remember, you probably do, but like 4 or 5 years ago, Kabam announced that on Christmas they're going to give us just one rank down ticket for
They gave us, yeah.
And I thought to myself at the time, like, how cool would it be if that was a yearly tradition and it was just one
Yeah,
of
I
each?
agree.
But
I love that.
you knew you could count on it, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
because there are so many people who took up, like, say, uh Thor Ragnarok for prestige, right? And now they don't use him, and he's not a top prestige champion, and they just wish they had it back. And so, like, to me,
And
that's
it's not just that, it's also like all of these changes to the champions and mechanics and
no doubt.
all of these hype jobs. Because again, no offense, so many champions get overhyped upon the release, and then 3 months later they're barely heard of and stuff like that. And a single rank down ticket wouldn't, completely change or break the system. It would be just an absolutely nice gesture that a ton of people would appreciate.
Well, and so that people ask me what's the one change I would make, and that's always my answer. Bring that back yearly. Just make it one, but let us know that we can count on it to where like Spider-Man 2099 is a great choice. I know people who took him to rank 4 and now regret it. The champion that I regret ranking up the most is Null because I never use him now. Is there a champion you've ranked up that you thought you'd use but you don't use anymore?
Uh, yeah, I think like of the obviously I have the whole Thor Ragnarok thing as well going on and like few other champions, but at the current highest progression level in between 7-star rank 2s and 6-star rank 5s, um I'm not like super upset about anything, but the one thing that if I had the rank down ticket in my hand right now, I would use it on Infamous Iron Man because I ranked up Infamous Iron Man not thinking that he's going to be like super amazing. I realized that, he's not the top tech champion, but I still had better impression of him then than I do now. But the point was, I also largely ranked him up because he's like the top prestige champion and I needed help with prestige. But ever since then, number one, Alliance Quest has been completely relevant. And even if that would be end all be all, I still wouldn't have made that prestige rank up per se, because prestige at the moment just does not matter that much. And the second thing is 7-star rank 2s came out and they have like absolutely blown up prestige. And like 7-stars came out like a month or two after I ranked up Infamous Iron Man. Then I looked at 7-star prestige numbers and realized that, within a couple of months from where we're talking right now, so let's say within half a year, your 6-star rank 5 prestige is just not going to matter because there are champions at 7-star SIG 20 level that overtake yours maxed out 6 stars prestige wise. And yeah, I really Infamous Iron Man. Not because I like hate him or anything like that. It's just that, again, the entire game shifted.
Well, you've already generously given over an hour of your time, and so as we start to wrap this up, I just want to know, is there anything that you think about that's important with where the game is that we haven't talked about that you wanted to touch on before we ended the interview?
Anything important as to where the game is? I think we kind of pretty much touched the main base because the biggest points of worry obviously are the game economy to me at the moment and the bugs, the problems, the inputs, the logs, and how Kabam's handling them and managing the community. Those are like three biggest things.
Yeah, well, and I completely agree with all those. And I think just the staleness of it all. They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I feel like a lot of people just feel like they've played the same game for so many years over and over again that it's just been a diminishing returns in terms of their happiness.
Again, like I think it drastically changes with something like Battlegrounds coming in. Like, because I think Battlegrounds have completely transformed the game. And like I cannot honestly say that I would be still playing this game if it wasn't for Battlegrounds. And like for me, because Battlegrounds exists, I enjoy the game more than I did, let's say, 2 years ago.
Definitely. Yeah. Well,
At the same time, you never know what else is going to happen.
and I do think that they've done a good job of making the side quests have better rewards. Like I still can't believe we get generic 6-star awakening gems every month. Like that's been
Well,
crazy.
it's easy to give something away when they don't really matter anymore to the paying player base. The people that spend cash on game at significant amounts don't give a rat's ass about generic gems. Like in this side quest, I I took 0 awakening gems because I have like 13 or 15 generic awakening gems in my stash plus alongside 20 plus class gems like scattered across. Because yeah, you just have been getting them plenty and gradually as they lower the necessity for them. And once people kind of catch up roster wise, I know that virtually everybody in my alliance doesn't care about awakening gems, whether they're free to play or not. I know that virtually everybody in like Plat 1, Masters level, Plat 2, there are very, 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 very few people who would willingly spend $5 on an awakening gem. Like this offer that we have for like $20, 6 stones, an awakening gem. If I could, I would exchange that awakening gem for additional 5, 6 stones. And so would every single top tier player as well. They just don't matter. So if Kabam gives them away, it's like, who cares?
So then would
We
you,
would have cared 3 years ago.
if you're running
Sorry.
Kabam, then would you bring back the trade-in store for the awakening gems to lower those numbers?
I mean, they eventually will have to do something because there's a ton of people with thousands upon thousands unopened 3 and 4 star signature stone crystals and a whole bunch of stuff. So I do think that they eventually will have to do something to effectively help us get rid of outdated items.
Yeah, that would be another suggestion of mine because yeah, I've got thousands as well and no motivation to open them, even like arena boosts, right?
I
Like
can't even use them. Like I have like 3,000 4-star signatures on crystals, and all of my 4-stars are max 6. Like, so, like, what do you do? And they keep adding them in rewards. It's like, and they're completely meaningless.
right.
They just occupy unnecessary space.
Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time. You gave well over an hour. Hopefully, it felt like it went by pretty fast. We covered over 50 questions, and I just want to say it's an honor to know you and to be a part of this community. And I really do enjoy watching your takes, and I feel like I learn as much from you out there as anybody. So thanks for educating the professor as well in this game.
Oh, my pleasure. And yeah, anytime. Just let me know.
All right, thanks again, KT.
All right, bye.
Bye bye.